Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant-toddler development specialist, Teresa Alexander Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome. I don't know what that crazy noise was. Welcome. I would like to welcome my guest and introduce you to Mr. Beatty Carmichael. He is the premier misdiagnosis breakthrough expert. He's going to tell you all about what that is and why we're going to have this awesome conversation today. Welcome, Beatty.
Well, hello, Teresa. It is great to be here.
Great to have you. So I'm so excited to have a chat with you about this misdiagnosis expert. Please shed light on what that might be, thank you, or what that is. Thanks.
Yeah. Have you ever gone to the doctor and he's diagnosed you as a certain issue, so he prescribes medication, and you go down this road of therapy trying to get well, and you actually start to get worse and not well? Have you ever either had that happen or know of people that have had that happen?
Oh, I know people. I know of many people.
Yeah. So that is a misdiagnosis, and it can be very expensive, not only financially, but on your life and on the turmoil and on the stress. And what I've found is a lot of people have been misdiagnosed with things like anxiety or bipolar disorder or depression. In fact, mental illness is, I would say, probably one of the biggest issues, because you have 66 million Americans on psychiatric meds. That's 60 million adults, 6 million children. And when I start to apply a spiritual roots issue, where I look at it and say, is this really a disease, or could it be something on the spiritual side of who we are that's now manifesting and masquerading as rheumatoid arthritis or chronic pain or mental illness of some sort? And so when you apply this therapy to see if it works and it disappears, then you know that you were misdiagnosed. And in fact, this is what doctors do. They say, I think it's this, let's try this medicine. And if it works, then I got the right diagnosis. If it doesn't work, we'll come back and try again. Does that make sense?
It does. It's for me, what came to mind is the guinea pig approach.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you said, it's costly, especially in America. Healthcare is so costly, and not only on the body, but also mentally. When you think of, the things that people are going through, the issues that they're having, and I'm not even going to go down the road of, because of all the poor nutrition and everything else that's been made really readily available. But yeah, so if there's a way that we can take care of that without that expense and without the mental anguish that comes with it, because, will this work? I've had these symptoms forever, and what's going to work? This hasn't worked. What? Help.
Right. Well, let me give you, so there's real interesting, if you look at just the psychiatric world, mental health, someone starts to, like a friend of mine, they say, well, in parent-teacher conferences, your son's a little slow, right? He's the slow kid in school. He has ADHD, and we need to put him on medicine. So my friend's been, they had him on 70 milligrams of one of the ADHD medicines. But then that creates another problem. He starts to get depressed. So now they put him on depression medicine. And what's interesting, we see a lot of things in the news right now where all these, and I want to be sensitive with the topic, but where depression medicines lead to suicidal thoughts, and there's this whole issue of what's going on. And it's like this spiral down, because we've been diagnosed with this problem, so they give us medication. Then it creates this problem, and then it creates this problem. And now we're on all these meds.
Yes.
And the question is, are we really dealing with those issues, or have we been misdiagnosed?
Right. And I don't even call those medicines, because they're not curing anything.
Right. They're simply dumbing you down and slowing you down and depressing you and it's wrecking your emotions a lot of times.
Yep. And I can only imagine what it's doing to the brains of the young children who I work with, because
Oh, yeah.
there's one, like you said, one medication for the ADHD, and then there's another medication for sleep, and there's another medication because the ADHD meds sometimes cause, other things, like, there are children who have, they engage in physical aggression. So when they're taking one medication, they engage in physical aggression. When they're off it, then something else happens. So then they're on something else. And it's just, why is a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old on, 5 different medications?
It almost seems like there's a conspiracy with pharmaceutical drugs. Man, I'm not a conspiracy, but think about this. It's the medicines are causing these additional problems. So then they create other medicines to try to counteract that. And the only person benefiting is big pharma back there, but we're the ones suffering with it. And this is the thing that happened with me. Just a little bit on my story is I come from 7 generations of medical doctors. So my whole family lineage is medicine and helping people. But a medical doctor is different than pharmaceutical, because back in those years, they were scientists and they really tried to do what they could to bring healing to the patient. But as we've gotten into more science and more pharmaceutical, it's like there's a medicine for everything. But the question is that diagnosis a real diagnosis, or has it been misdiagnosed? Because think about this. If I were to take a Ferrari body and stick it on an old Acura little sports car, then you can diagnose that as a Ferrari because it looks like a Ferrari. But when you open up the hood, it's something totally different. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Yeah. And so what I've started to do is I've started to realize about 9 years ago, God directed me into just praying for people for healing. And I started to see people healed. And then I started to dig into ancient spiritual laws. What's going on? Because are they really being healed of a disease, or is there something different? And what I started to uncover is, as most people realize, is, we're a spiritual being in a physical body. And a lot of the issues that happen in our physical body are actually coming from the spiritual side of things. And it's not all physical, and it's not all mental, and it's not all chemical. And so I started to digging deeper and started to leading people into an approach of eliminating spiritual torments. And when those torments disappear, the symptoms that they were masquerading as would disappear. And so this is how, the doctor would say, well, let's test this therapy and see if it works. And if it is, the diagnosis is right. So I'm going out there and I've helped over 1,000 people in the last several years get totally free of the symptoms of being misdiagnosed with all kinds of mental illnesses, all kinds of chronic pain. Like my friend, he's been diagnosed and on ADHD medicine since grade school. He's now 44 years old. And during that time, he was then put on depression medicine because his ADHD medicine creates depression. So now they're trying to control depression. And the maximum on that depression medicine was 20 milligrams. He was on 40. Now, going through this process, he's off all of his meds. He's thinking clear. All the stuff that they said was ADHD was actually I'll call it a spiritual oppressor. And it created all these problems. And medicine isn't going to solve that. In fact, I remember this was really cool because these are kind of the fun stories you hear. Rheumatoid arthritis, right? True rheumatoid arthritis is incurable. And so this lady, her name was Susan. I volunteer teach at a women's addiction recovery center. So she was over there. And she said, my arthritis is flaring up. Can you help me? I said, sure. Let me ask you something. And I asked her if she had unforgiveness for anyone, because unforgiveness is a spiritual root, right? It's not a physical thing. It's a spiritual thing. And we hold on to unforgiveness. And she said, yes. I said, and she'd had her rheumatoid arthritis for about 20 years. And I said, who is it that you hold unforgiveness towards? She said, it's my sister. She did something to my mom 20 years ago and I've never forgiven her. So now you see this correlation. Rheumatoid arthritis for 20 years, holding unforgiveness for 20 years. So watch what happened. This is how powerful this is. The doctors diagnosed her with all their medical tests as rheumatoid arthritis. I lead her to say, God, I forgive my sister for what she did to my mom. Will you now please remove my arthritis pain? Within an hour, it was completely gone. She went back to the doctor 4 weeks later. He retested her and said, you have no arthritis in your body. In fact, he said the tests show that your body shows no signs of ever having had arthritis. So what that was a misdiagnosis. She was living in pain, living on medication with a degraded quality of life for 20 years without ever realizing she'd been misdiagnosed, and it was actually a spiritual oppressor in her life tied to a spiritual thing of unforgiveness, and it wasn't medical or disease at all.
Wow.
That's what I'm finding.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And, a lot of people might be thinking, oh my gosh, it's so woo-woo. However, I watched one of the videos that you put up, that you sent me.
Yes.
With the former CFL player who had the knee pain.
Yes.
And while he was saying the prayer, it just kept reducing and reducing. And I thought, to me, it felt real. And I know, I pray, and I've seen my prayers do things.
Yes.
Never in the way that you're praying, that you're doing this, which is teaching me a new way to pray.
Well, that's the exciting part. People pray all the time, but they rarely see answers to their prayers. Mm-hmm. And like that guy, what's really interesting, and I'll fill you in for the listeners here, is a man named Jason, and he is in his mid-40s. When he was in his 20s, he played for one of the Canadian professional football leagues, and he had a micro fracture in his knee, and it's been giving him problems ever since for over 20 years. And what happens is he'll get this extreme pain in his knee. And on the show that we were doing, it was a 7 on a scale of 0 to 10. And he is a alternative healer, which I always have fun with my alternative healer hosts, because they know they bring healing to people, but he couldn't bring healing into himself, because what I've uncovered through ancient biblical texts are the exact roots of these problems. And so I led him into a 3-step simple prayer, asking this creator God of the universe just to reveal to him if there's a spiritual root, if this is actually a spiritual torment and not a physical issue, then reveal it to me. And something came across his mind. And so I led him into how to nullify that. And in literally just a matter of a few minutes, you see me laughing on the video because he's standing up, he's moving around. I can't find it anywhere. The pain's totally gone. And I'm just over there laughing and said, it happens all the time this way. And he's now totally out of pain because it was a misdiagnosis. It wasn't actually, now there may have been a microfracture initially, but what kept the pain going was a spiritual root.
Right. Yeah. Because fractures don't stay broken that long, right? The body heals itself. So
right, it heals itself. And so this is an interesting thing. How can you answer the question? How do I know if I have a spiritual oppressor that's creating these issues versus an accurate medical diagnosis? If it persists ongoing, it's almost 90% of the time. I'm finding that about 90% of the people that go through this process see the things that they've been diagnosed with as a disease disappear because it wasn't a disease to begin with. It was a spiritual oppressor within their life tied to a spiritual root. And that's all it was with him.
Now, what do you say to the people who don't believe in God?
It doesn't matter. So watch this. This is the coolest part. Let me show you how you prove scientifically something exists that you can't see. Mm-hmm. So I'm holding up my pen. I let go of it, and it drops. Every time I do the same activity, the outcome is the same. And if you were to pick up your pen and let go of it, it's going to drop. So now, It's called empirical data that we can observe. When you do the same activity and it produces the same result, then you can prove there is a law that governs it and not just your thinking. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So what I have done with the prayer freedom, which is a step-by-step guide to getting free from the misdiagnosis of mental illnesses, chronic pain, addictions. I'm seeing all these things disappear, especially at the Addiction Recovery Center, because it wasn't that at all. And even if someone doesn't believe it, it's okay, because when you follow the same pattern, the same outcome always works, because it's not based on your belief. It's not based on religion. And this is why, whether you're atheist or agnostic or any of the other religions, it still works the same, because it has nothing to do with belief. In fact, I remember I was I've been teaching at this Addiction Recovery Center. It's one of the largest ones in America, and they house over 500 women. And my class is the favorite, because for every 20 women that come through my class, all I do is I give them my book, The Prayer Freedom, which is a worksheet. In the back, there's a worksheet that walks you through this process, so you do it on your own. And I simply give them space to go through it on their own. And within a month, 9 out of 10, they've gotten freed of all their addictions, all of their mental health issues, all of their chronic pain issues. I mean, when I measure it statistically, it was 87%. It's all gone. In fact, can I read you a short story about just one of them?
Absolutely.
So this is a typical response. And I want you to see, as I'm reading this is a lady named Catherine. She was medically diagnosed with these issues. And watch what happens. She said, "I want to thank you for the prayer freedom. It has changed my life. Growing up," this is a thank you note she sent me. "Growing up, my relationship with my mom was really tough. She was abusive, and she and my stepdad would drink and get in lots of fights. And by the time I was in 7th grade, she said she didn't want anything to do with me and left." Mm-hmm. And as a therapist, you understand this is where most trauma and misdirection and problems in life begin. So watch what happens with her. That's when life began spiraling downward. By 16 years old, I was having sex with lots of boys and started getting into drugs. That was just over 10 years ago. Before doing this prayer process, I was addicted to heroin and fentanyl and meth. I had a lot of worry and stress and anxiety. On a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably an 8. I've had constant allergies and sinus headaches for years, so these are their diagnosis. Migraines 5 out of 7 days a week, and a super heavy feeling like I was carrying around an overweight backpack every day. Life has been really difficult. And you've dealt with these people that just feel like that, right?
Absolutely.
But the prayer of freedom and this process changed everything. Literally, everything is gone. No more sinus issues, all gone. No more headaches and migraines, all gone. No more heaviness, it's all gone. No more anxiety or stress or worries. Literally, on a scale of 1 to 10, they've all gone to 0. Even my addictions have gone to 0. I don't want drugs anymore. I have no urges for them anymore. And even the thought of any drug disgusts me. It's all gone. She was so completely misdiagnosed. Not because the medical system is evil. It's because the medical system looks only at the physical side and tries to diagnose it. They only look at the shape of the car and say, that's a Ferrari. But they don't know how to look on the spiritual side and actually go underneath the hood and say, nope, not a Ferrari. This is something different. Masquerading as a Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
And
they
that's
don't know
all
what
this
they
is.
don't know.
They don't know what they don't know. And what I've been doing with, I'll call it just the grace of God and leading me and uncovering this, is I've been looking at it from the different side. And I'm now helping people get free of things that medical science has diagnosed as incurable. I'm seeing glaucoma disappear. I'm seeing addictions, I'm seeing symptoms of glaucoma. Medical science says it's glaucoma. It was a spiritual issue because it responded to a spiritual approach. I've seen the symptoms of diabetes, sleep apnea, where guys even gotten rid of a sleep app machine, gave it to a friend. I've seen ADHD, misdiagnosed ADHD, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, addictions, arthritis, lupus, fibromyalgia, COPD, all these things that people have been diagnosed with that are persistent issues, constantly taking away quality of life, treating it as a spiritual issue rather than a medical disease. It disappears, showing that the medical diagnosis was misdiagnosed. Not every time, but about 90% of the time. And what's interesting is you start to think, like it's just with psychiatric meds, 66 million Americans are on psychiatric meds. If that 90% holds up, that means these people are being misdiagnosed and overdrugged and creating all kinds of problems in their lives simply because the medical community doesn't understand the spiritual side of how it manifests and masquerades as what could have been a legitimate disease. But it wasn't a disease at all because it responded to a spiritual approach.
Yep. You know, in all of my life, I've had one doctor who looked at people holistically. I mean, unless he was a functional doctor, but he believed in treating body, mind, and soul. And I was just like, wow, because it's, you know, we're whole beings. And it's really important to look at other areas. And he was big on, you know, the belly laugh as medicine. He's like, a good belly laugh is better than medicine. So laugh away.
You know, it's interesting because my father-in-law was also a doctor. He's deceased now, but he was the old school doctor. You come into his office and he would sit down and actually interview and talk with you. And he said, and he would tell you, you know, your health is three. It's physical, it's mental, and it's spiritual. And he would talk through all three of those because only from there could he actually pinpoint what the issue was and diagnose it properly. Today, it's only mental or it's physical, and they never look at the spiritual. And yet I'm finding that the spiritual, in my work, 90% of the time, someone goes through this process with the prayer of freedom, and what was diagnosed as a medical condition disappears. I remember one guy, he was getting contorted. He lost 2 inches in height because his back was bending over. He was in constant pain. And on the phone, guiding him through this, his back straightens up. He goes home. He takes a shower and he stands up. He said, "Oh my gosh, I'm standing perfectly straight." He calls his wife and daughter in, and they say, You've grown 2 inches. Literally, in just a few hours, all of the release, because it was a spiritual torment, not physical, and he was back to normal. And the medical community just doesn't understand the spiritual side of things.
So true. And hopefully somebody will listen and they'll start to realize that we're whole beings and not just a physical body. I have a question. Might be a silly question. So we're talking about all kinds of pain. There are a lot of people in financial pain, Beatty. Does this work for them too?
Yes, believe it or not. So watch this. Anytime you see a pattern, so like I hired a lady a few years back, and I thought I would be different. Looking at her resume, she had 5 jobs 1 year at a time. And I thought, okay, probably just bad employers. So I hire her, and people love me. I keep employees a long time usually. And to the date that she was hired, she quit. And anytime you see a pattern of just constant battle, friction within your relationship, or you keep losing a job, or you keep going up and it crashes in your income. What that means is there's a spiritual side of things. I actually had it in my life. And once I saw the pattern, anytime you see the pattern is consistent, there's almost always a spiritual component, not a personal component. You get rid of the spiritual, and it frees itself. So yes, it can help financially.
Okay, that is fascinating. Thank you. I just thought I'd throw that out there just somebody might be wondering. Because like I said, people are in pain in so many different ways. So so Beatty, we only have a couple of minutes.
Yep.
If there's one thing you want our audience to leave this moment with, what would that be?
If you or a loved one are dealing with anything that requires prescription medication all the time to try to manage or control the issue, you have a 90% likelihood that you've been misdiagnosed, and it's a spiritual root that if you get rid of it, the symptom of that issue will disappear literally overnight. If you're dealing with chronic pain and you haven't been diagnosed, or you're dealing with the low-level, what people call anxiety and depression, but doctors haven't said you have it, you're not on medication. If you have anything that's constantly persistent in your life and has taken away your quality of life, asthma, allergies, sinus headaches, migraines, 90% of the time I see those things disappear simply by going through the breakthrough guide that's in this book, The Prayer of Freedom. And I would encourage you, just go, you'll see the link, theprayeroffreedombook.com. Just type that in. You'll see a short video about it. It'll take you straight to Amazon. You can go to Amazon, but Prayer and Freedom, you'll lose the book because there's so many books with prayer and freedom in the title. So go to theprayeroffreedombook.com. There's some free stuff, but most importantly, it'll take you straight there. And try it, because quality of life, getting free of these issues, is worth just going through the simple process. And that whole process takes maybe an hour or two for most people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beatty. Audience, please go get it. You deserve to be free from all of your pain. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
And thank you for having me on.
You are most welcome, sir. Thank you for being here.